Hey, have you been victimized in life? Now, most of us have on some level. Many of us have in profound ways. I'm not trying to rip open any scabs or reopen any wounds today. I feel like we're treading on sacred and holy ground. And so I'm going to try not to be long, but I want to go deep and I want to go there quickly. I'm Pastor Cary. This is Growing in the Gospel. We are slow walking today through the rest of Psalm 129. If this is your first video in this particular series or on this channel, I really want to encourage you to go back 2 days to the first video on this psalm. It's called How to Handle Affliction. The second video then is called When Someone Treats You Like Dirt. And today is about giving your victimhood to God. All three of these videos give us profound biblical insight on what to do with our afflictions and with injustice. So if you have experienced injustice in your life, I promise you these three videos will minister to you, and I pray that this final look today will as well. But the reason I need you to go back and watch the other two is that I don't have time to repeat everything we've said, and we've laid so much important groundwork. So in verses 1 and 2, the psalmists are accepting that affliction has been a very real part of their past. They've been victimized, okay? But the end of verse 2, yet they have not prevailed against me. So the victimhood, the persecution, the affliction, the injustice does not define me. It does not win. It does not own me. And it only has the power it only has power to perpetuate itself in my life if I give it that power. And that's where yet they have not prevailed against me. Yesterday we talked about that. It was so important. So accepting it and benefiting from it, that was phase 2, and that is the plowers plowed on my back, made their long furrows, but the Lord is righteous. God is righteous in how he leads me through these moments and seasons and what he does from it and what he does with it. And he can cut asunder the cords that bind me to this victimhood. We talked about that yesterday. So there's the accepting it, there's the benefiting from it. But now today we're going to talk about committing it to the Lord, because verse 5, 6, 7, and 8 is really about putting my victimhood into the hands of God. And this is something that I want to challenge you to contemplate deeply. This is going to be, at first, I think I risk even sounding insensitive, okay? And I don't mean to, and God doesn't either. But you have two choices with deep and profound victimhood or hurt or woundedness or injustice in your life. You have really only two paths through these kinds of things, and they are pervasive in our world and have been for thousands of years. And God's going to make it all right in the end. He's going to bring about final and ultimate justice. But until then, you have two paths through the woods, okay? The one path is to harbor it, to hold on to it, to keep it, and to make it yours. And when you do this, it becomes your identity. You are defined by what was done to you. Now, the reason I say I risk sounding insensitive is that what was done to someone when there's injustice is huge. It's life-shaping. It's in many cases scarring and wounding beyond comprehension. It brings a depth of pain and suffering that is indescribable. And so it is partially understandable that this becomes almost like a conjoined twin that you are attached to, and that it's almost like a security blanket. The victimhood becomes an identity. And when it becomes an identity, it's going to be hard to part with. But at the same time, it's going to be like a leech sucking the lifeblood out of you. It's a parasite. Woundedness becomes something we endear ourselves to, victimhood, in like a learned helplessness. That's the psychological term for it, learned helplessness. This happened to me. I'm helpless against it. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't rewrite history, so I'm stuck with it. That learned helplessness is a psychological giving up. And so this event or these events adhere themselves to my soul, and they feed on sorrow and grief and remorse and regret and pain and wound. And the Bible calls it a root of bitterness, and it springs up and it's just constantly troubling me, and it flows over and troubles others. And this victimization, this victimhood becomes my defining quality. And while on one hand I get dependent on it because it's my identity, it defines me. So I can't let it go, because if I let it go, I don't have an identity. And a wounded identity is better than no identity. We can't live without an identity, okay? And we can't see any path to another identity, because this has become so huge. It's all we see. It's blocking our view. And it has become who I am. And I can't let it go because it's who I am. And I've become psychologically, spiritually, emotionally dependent on it. But even as I'm dependent on it, it is killing me. It's driving me to deeper sorrow, deeper pain, deeper woundedness, deeper regret. It is empowering the abuser over and over and over. It's as though the abuser lives inside of me and repeats the abuse every time I relive it, every time I rethink it. And so the abuse never goes away, and the wound never closes up, and the bleeding and the oozing never stops. And it becomes my defining trait. And all of my relationships and all of my decisions and all of my life direction is made through the grid or through the lens of the fact that this is who I am and this is what was done to me. Now, I understand all of that, but there's more to your story, and there's more to you. You are not simply the product of somebody else's bad decisions, or what somebody else did to you, or how somebody else wounded you, or the bleeding or the oozing that you've come to know as life, that you've come to know as an identity that's come to define you. In Jesus, you can have another identity. And Jesus came as God and lived a perfect life, and he went to the cross, and on that cross, he crushed the head of Satan, and he took all of our sins and injustices into himself so that we could be forgiven and brought back into the love and grace of God, so that we could have access to God's healing and God's comfort and God's salvation and the promise of a home in heaven when we die, and the presence of God's Spirit in us. And here it is, a new name, a new identity. See, up to this point in your life, you might just be what somebody else did to you. That might be your very definition. But the moment you ask Jesus to come into your life as your Savior and Lord, he becomes your highest Lord and Savior and King. And the highest being, the creator of the universe, has set his love on you and calls you his own. And you're born into the family of God. You're welcomed into royalty, eternal royalty. And you are indwelled by the Spirit of God, and you become the child of God and the friend of Jesus. You become the treasure of God's heart. And Jesus says, I loved you so much. I love you so much. I died for you. And I want to heal your scars and your woundedness, and I want to bring you forward. And what I did on the cross and what I can do in your life through my Spirit is I can give you a new identity, so that you are not defined by what was done to you. You are now defined by what was done for you. So some other human being might have done something to you, but the highest being in the universe has done something for you to lift you out of that and to adopt you into his family. And now you're the child of God. The highest being in the universe knows you to the depths and loves you to the moon, and he picks you up out of the wreckage of your past, and cleans you off and heals you up and binds up your wounds and hugs you and loves you and wraps his arms around you and carries you forward and instates you into his family as the king, and he sits you at his table and he brings you into his feast and into his forever home. You become his, and your past and other people can no longer define you because the cords have been cut. The cords have been cut. And when you receive Jesus, you are empowered by the definition of God to be free from what was done to you. Now, I'm not saying you'll forget those events. They'll be in your memory. I'm saying they won't have power over you. They won't have defining authority over you. They won't have this perpetual influence over you. With every passing day, the wounds will start to heal. And it will go further and further into the rear view mirror. It will inform who you are, but it will not define who you are. It will refine you, but not define you. And then you will be able to put this whole set of events from the past, whatever anybody did to you, unjustly, injustice, you'll be able to take that whole thing and put it into the hands of God. Look at verse 5. Let them all be confounded and turn back that hate Zion. Let. 5 and 6 both begin with let them. Let them. The prayer is, God, let the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Persians that oppressed us and persecuted us, let them be reversed. Reverse their power, reverse their prominence. Those that hate Zion, reverse their story. Now, is this a prayer for justice? Yes. Is it a prayer for vengeance? Yes, but it's bigger than that. It's a prayer that God would win. Okay? God, you win in our lives. You win for us. Verse 6, let them be as the grass upon the housetops, which withereth afore it groweth up. God, remove the power of those that afflicted me. Remove the influence. Grass on a housetop is seed that randomly landed up on the top of the house, and there's thatch up there, so it took root and it grows up, but there's no water, and there's not enough there for it to live, so it grows up and the sun scorches it and it dies. So the idea is, God, prevent them. You deal with them. The big idea is, God, you deal with them. I'm yours now, and I'm safe with you. I'm so safe with you. I'm so healed. I'm so whole in you. I so have a new definition, and I'm so free from the cords, the chains that bound me, that now, God, I don't even care to enact justice myself or to need vengeance myself. I'm just going to put this all in your hands, and I'm going to trust that you're going to turn it back and reverse the situation and confound and confuse those that oppress me, and you're going to cause their efforts to wither up. Look at verse 7. Wherewith the mower filleth not his hand, nor he that bindeth the sheaves of his bosom. Verse 7 is continuing the idea of the grass on the housetop, and is saying the mower, there's not enough of that grass for the mower to even get a handful of it. There's not enough of that grass for the harvester to even get an armful, like he's harvesting sheaves of wheat. Okay, so God diminish the power of those people so that it's negligible, so that it's minuscule, so that it's a non-event. Do you see this? God, they plowed my back and they made long furrows and they bound me up and they've afflicted me from my youth. But God, turn all of that back, reverse it. Verse 5, confound it, reverse it, disrupt it, and minimize it. Let it be like grass that is barely there and isn't there. Let it be so minimal and so minuscule that you can't even get a fistful of it. What a beautiful picture. You might have buckets full and truckloads full and barrels full of hurt and resentment and scorn and bitterness, but God can diminish all that so that it has no influence over you anymore. Verse 8, neither do they which go by say, the blessing of the Lord be upon you. We bless you in the name of the Lord. What is the idea here? The idea here is that as a farmer was out binding up sheaves and harvesting in the field, travelers and passersby would see the abundance and see the blessing, and say, wow, God's blessed you. Hey, God bless you. We bless you in the name of the Lord. Bless you, my friend. Okay. And what is the picture here in verse 8? The prayer is, God, remove the blessing. Give these people the fruit of their labors and let them be so. Verse 8 is saying, let them become invisible. Because it's just courtesy, Hello, good morning. I take walks in the morning sometimes, and I pass people on the sidewalk, and I nod and say, good morning. Okay? Well, this is the same idea. Good morning. The passersby. But now the prayer is, Lord, let those that pass by not even see, not even wish blessing upon them. Make my enemies transparent to my future. Do you see it? Make my enemies invisible to my future. God, confound them, reverse them, turn them back, make them weak, make them minuscule, minimize their influence, make them transparent. Take me forward. Oh, friend, this is so rich and so important. You wouldn't have caught all this by just a quick read of Psalm 129, but when you really contemplate what it's talking about, you can take your affliction and your oppression and your injustice. You can take your victimhood. And first, you can accept that it's a real occurrence in your life. And then secondly, you can benefit from it. It has not prevailed. It will not prevail against me. God is bigger. God is righteous, and he's going to bring good from it. And then you're free. The bands have been cut, and you can give it to God. So I pray for you, whatever your past, that you'll give your victimhood to God. And this is the part where I want to challenge you in a way that you might think is insensitive, and I pray that you won't think that. You can let it, you can put it into the hands of God. I almost said you can let it go, and that would have sounded insensitive. Listen, you're not letting it go in some trivial, trite, pithy little cliche way. Let it go, let it go. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. I am saying God's hands can carry this. You can trust him with it. He's going to bring about justice. See, the thing about letting it go is the sense of forget it. You can't forget it. And it's the sense of, it's the sense of justice is never going to happen. So you just have to give up. It's not giving up. It's giving over to God. It's not letting it go just indiscriminately and into nothingness. You are placing it into the hands of God. And you can do this, okay? But you need to do it deliberately. And it might be tears. You might need to write it on a piece of paper and lay it at an altar somewhere. You might need to set fire to it. You might need to do something physically demonstrative of, God, I am putting this victimhood in your hands. I'm not going to take it back. It's yours. This no longer defines me. These events, these people, they no longer have power in my life. There was a day in my life when I made this decision about some injustice. And up to that day, it was eating me. It was sucking the lifeblood out of me, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. But the day I gave it to the Lord was the day I started to heal, and the day I started to live free of those events and those words. And God's done a marvelous work in my life since that time. So I'm praying for you that you will release, not let it go, you will release the victimhood into the hands of God. And I hope you understand how much I respect the experiences and the pain and the suffering, but also how big God's hands are and how safe and secure his heart is for your wounds. So trust him and go forward with him. I'm praying for you. I'll see you next time.